In California, so far, only one of the dozens of candidates running in the state's two marquee races has been confirmed to advance to the November election. Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass will be on the ballot this fall, seeking her second term in office. Last night, she thanked supporters for standing by her despite a controversial first term.
Over these last 3.5 years, we have laid a foundation, and we're going to build on that foundation because we know what a city we have and what a city we can be. And let me just say that tomorrow begins the second half of this journey.
Bass is the only candidate from her race to have secured her spot in November. The Associated Press hasn't yet called the second candidate who's going to be her competition. But as of now, Republican candidate and former reality TV star Spencer Pratt is in contention. He told reporters last night he's already focused on November.
Well, obviously God wanted 5 more months of me exposing all the failures of our mayor. So it's going to be a fun ride. I hope she's ready.
Are you ready?
I mean, I was born for this, clearly. Got in this because as a citizen, I felt like my city failed myself, my neighbors, my family. And when I got on this mission now, I look around and the city's failing most of Los Angeles.
So that's the mayoral. Meanwhile, no winners have been called in the race to replace term-limited Governor Gavin Newsom. Only about half the votes have been counted so far. But Trump-backed former Fox News host, Republican Steve Hilton, is in the lead there. 2 Democrats closely follow him, Xavier Becerra, the former Health and Human Services Secretary, and billionaire Tom Steyer. Both spoke to supporters overnight, continuing to show confidence that they'll make it to November.
Because we know the true miracle of democracy is this. After all the exhausting ads are run, the pundits are spun, and the billionaires try to buy their way in, it's the people, only the people, who get the last word.
It might take some time to figure out where this is going. We're going to wait till every ballot is counted. We're going to give democracy a time to work, and we know we finished really strong.
Let's get right into it. Politics reporter for Notice, Daniela Diaz, is here on set with me. Let's start in California, because there were other states that voted last night, too. It takes a while for this state to count votes, in large part because it's so big, in other parts because we got a time difference working against us here on the East Coast. And yet we've got the contours of this race. First in the mayoral, the fact that Spencer Pratt might actually be not just in this top 2, but an active challenger to Karen Bass. I mean, what does that tell you about California politics, LA politics in this moment where they're still trying to rebuild from those fires, which was a central controversial point in this race?
What a shocking development, Allie, because as we always talk about California, especially here in Washington, D.C. with Democrats, we talk about California as one of the bluest states in the country that has potentially a Republican as mayor. I mean, of course, it's still very early.
Yeah.
California is a mail-in ballot state. It could take days, weeks for us to see what the results are of this election. But even just the fact that it's only been a few hours and we're seeing a slight lead from Karen Bass to Spencer Pratt, that reality TV star that we grew up watching on TV, now coming out against the Democratic administration of LA, saying he wants to change things and getting a response from voters on that. It really says a lot about where Democrats think they are right now in a year that they see as a referendum on Trump, and where Republicans are messaging where they say, look, we still think change needs to be delivered. Democrats are not delivering.
And Pratt is really channeling a lot of the anger that Angelenos have felt in the aftermath of the Palisades and other fires about what it's looked like to rebuild and the role that the mayor has played in that. And so the parallels between, the ways that we talked about Trump in 2015 of a reality TV star positioning himself as an outsider, channeling anger, saying highly controversial and hurtful things. I mean, those parallels are there with Spencer Pratt as well. So I think that's fascinating. And then, of course, you look to the California governor's race, and there were open questions and still are about, is it going to be a Democrat versus a Democrat? Is it going to be Becerra or Steyer? And now we're kind of getting some contours on that race as well.
Well, Republicans always lead at first, as I said earlier, because of it's such a strong mail-in ballot state. It takes forever to count these ballots, and Republicans tend to vote in person. Those ballots are counted that day. Mail-in ballots tend to be Democrats. Those ballots will be counted in the next couple of weeks. But it is notable that we are seeing Steve Hilton in a lead right now. And it really means that there was no clear frontrunner, which we have reported on for weeks leading up to this, after Eric Swalwell had to drop out due to sexual misconduct and sexual allegations. And it shows that Democrats in a state that is so blue did not have a clear frontrunner here, even after Eric Swalwell dropped out.
And that was
concerning.
Concern. Yeah, right.
It's concerning for Democrats because as a party that has such a strong base in California, they didn't seem to have a candidate that could really break through.
You do have to wonder if Kamala Harris had run in that race, would she have consolidated support? There were questions after the Swalwell controversy. Might she jump in late? I don't know. It's a thought exercise as we unpack election results on this Wednesday morning. But we're also looking to other states because there were multiple elections last night. In Iowa, President Trump's pick for governor, Republican Congressman Randy Feenstra, actually lost last night's GOP gubernatorial primary. Marks a major blow for President Trump, whose endorsement has been the gold standard for Republican candidates so far this year. And then in the fight for retiring Senator Joni Ernst's seat, Iowa State Rep and Paralympian Josh Turek won last night's Democratic Senate primary. Sets up a competitive general election against Republican Congresswoman Ashley Hinson. It's a seat Democrats are hoping to flip in November. Josh Turek is actually going to be a guest coming up a little later on Morning Joe, too. And then in New Jersey, former Navy helicopter pilot Rebecca Bennett won her Democratic primary. She'll take on incumbent Republican Congressman Tom Keene in November. Keene is notable because he's been absent from Capitol Hill for months amid an unexplained medical condition. Congressman released a statement yesterday saying he's focused on his recovery and would return to work in person within a matter of weeks. This is one of those great mysteries on the Hill and concerning on behalf of his constituents because where's he been? Not voting. And in New Mexico, former Interior Secretary Deb Haaland won the Democratic nomination for governor. She could make history as the first female Native American governor if she's elected in November. So all of these other races, important for us to keep track of. But I am really looking at Iowa because this is a state where Democrats feel good about several House seats that they might flip. One of them was decided last election cycle by just over 100 votes, so that's notable. When you look to the Senate contest, it's an open seat. They're questioning, might we have a chance there? And in the governor's race, a real knockdown for Donald Trump, who endorsed Feenstra, but couldn't get him over the finish line. I mean, take it in totality. What do you see here?
Well, I just want to focus on the bigger picture here, Allie, where, everyone talks about Texas. And I'm from Texas. Yeah. I'm from Texas, so I'm a little biased. But Iowa could be a state that could flip a majority in the Senate. I mean, it doesn't get as much attention, but someone like Josh Turek winning that Senate primary says a lot about the Democratic voters in that state. And also, it was a huge win for Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, who was backing Josh Turek against Zach Wahls, the more progressive candidate. And while Donald Trump, it's also notable that Donald Trump's endorsed candidate, Congressman Feenstra, didn't win that primary. So it's a state that's going to probably attract a lot of attention in the general election because things didn't go as predicted for Republicans in this scenario for that state. And it could mean a lot in a state that, has been Republican in the past. But the fact that we also saw Rob Sands win, there's a lot of factors here that could attract attention from Democrats across the country.
Yeah, and Rob Sands is someone who obviously has a track record of being a lone Democrat winning in a red state. And I guess the question in Iowa, and we'll see as more happens what the answer to this is it a red state or a Trump red state? And I think that's going to be one of the tests. But I mean, the other piece of this, too, is Democrats broadly right now are both facing a moment where the atmospherics look really good for them. And at the same time, there are tiny scandals marring some of that, right? It's Graham Plattner in Maine dealing with a sexting scandal on top of everything else that he's had in his past. It's Jill Biden on Morning Joe and other programs relitigating 2024, bringing up the specter of that. Just a vibe check. Like, how do Democrats that you're talking to feel right now?
They don't feel that any of this is helping. I mean, Graham Plattner was beating Janet Mills, who was also the establishment's picked candidate for that race in Maine, which all Democrats saw as an easy win for them because it's a very interesting state. And Susan Collins, while she's won the state, could possibly lose that seat to a Democrat.
Despite that, it's never been easy for them to flip before.
But they really saw a chance with Janet Mills, who's won statewide before. Yeah. Turns out she didn't win in the polls, and she didn't have the funds to continue. And then we saw Graham Plattner take over, and now we're seeing this scandal completely take over the state and have Democrats facing a lot of questions. He was just in D.C. having to answer to those questions to other Democrats at the at the campaign headquarters. But I think the bigger question is here whether Democrats are going to be able to pull this through. You know, a year ago, they were incredibly optimistic after a couple of months of seeing Trump in the administration that they could win the majorities, definitely in the House. That tends to be historically how these things go when there's a different candidate or Republican in the White House. But it's going to be unclear what they can do in November to be able to win the majority, because right now it doesn't seem like they'll be able to.
Yeah, a lot of time between now and November, but a lot for us to unpack before then. Politics reporter for Notice, Daniela Diaz. Always great to see you. Thank you for coming on.